Stares discriminate against fat bodies. Welcome to Soft Science Sophistry with Friends, episode 2. Walter Whiteness. Oh my god.
Does this have anything to do with Breaking Bad?
This paper argues that colonial biopolitics and informality co-produce a state of exception for non-human animals in cities based on the socio-political construct of human-animal binary. Colonial is understood in an anthropocentric sense of privileged human imperialism over non-humans and poor humans.
Well, the next time you see
magic.
me, like the next time I go see, say, a dog operating a car successfully, I might think that maybe we, are deserving of the privilege we have, but we seem to have some very inherent structural privileges over animals, like they're just not that good at shooting us.
I have Peter Todd and Tone Vase with me. Thank you for joining me, guys. I also have a few peer-reviewed papers that will certainly go down in history as incredibly beneficial to humankind. And if there's one argument for having a government, it's funding such wonderful research. Okay, nothing suits me like a suit. Performing masculinity and in How I Met Your Mother. This article uses How I Met Your Mother as a case study to explore a new emphasis within post-feminist media texts on exposing the constructed and conflicted nature of masculinity. Peter, do you find that your masculinity is constructed and conflicted in nature?
That's a hard one to answer without a grant, but I'd love to apply for one, and then I could think more about the subject.
If you wrote in saying, I would like to explore the constructs and conflicts of my masculinity as imposed on me by colonialist society, you would get like a $50,000 grant.
I'm white, $5,000.
That's true, and straight.
I can,
or so you claim.
I can change.
You can change for the money. Tone is speechless.
I'm speechless at these. It's amazing to me. I'm like, wow, I definitely did not take advantage of the money that's out there to get for some of this research.
Of course, the sad thing is the idea that they're all getting money for this is incorrect. A lot of them are paying to go through these programs, which is just even more insane. One of the distinguishers between field that's worthwhile and field that isn't, whether or not you can get your PhD paid for. In engineering as an example, nobody pays to finish their PhDs. You get grants and all kinds of stuff. Liberal arts,
because we need engineers.
Yeah,
I didn't pay to get my master's in financial engineering. I got paid to do it.
A paper I glanced at, and it was drawing a correlation between terrorists and engineering degrees, and how most of the recent terrorist attacks were executed by people who held engineering degrees.
Banned engineering degrees. We have to ban engineering degrees. They're dangerous.
Obviously, they're problematic.
The standard reply to that is that obviously engineers are the ones with successful attacks. Engineering teaches you how to do stuff and get things done.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a huge correlation in the ability to fly an airplane and airplane crashes.
This article analyzes Ali G through the concept of liquid racism, proletarian blackface, appropriation and class struggle in Mike Judge's office space. It is important for scholars to pay attention to the role of social media in reproducing whiteness. Black anality. Black anality. I hope everyone's of age. Black anality argues that black and anal are rendered ideologically, discursively, and representationally synonymous, and that black female flesh becomes the material space on which this convergence occurs. Okay, in turning attention to this understudied and over-determining space, the black anus, black anality, considers the racial meanings produced in pornographic texts that insistently return to the black female anus as a critical site of pleasure, peril, and curiosity.
Yeah, I once had a black anus go and thread me with a knife. Very perilous.
How many females did they sample?
How many hours of footage did she watch?
I mean, the criticism you really should make is whether or not if this is going to be a scientific paper, has any predictive value. For instance, can you go make a model about, say, blue anuses?
What's a blue, like a cop? Are you making a Black Lives Matter joke?
No, it's very simple. Like, if your model has predictive value, surely we should be able to go predict the discourse around another type of anus.
Surely. If more women with cellulite or higher BMI were portrayed in magazines and in TV shows, it is likely that cellulite and higher BMI would stop being considered an unattractive feature of women's body.
You know, another way to go do this would be to go and reverse time and then make it that older women and people with
that's all we have to do.
All this had higher chances of going and successfully having kids.
Why are old women not considered beautiful? Could it be because they can't procreate?
Yeah.
And is cellulite a signal to an unhealthy body? Perhaps that is why it is not considered attractive.
And equally, in like other circumstances, there is good evidence that in cultures where starvation is a likely way to end up dead, sure enough,
Being
we
a
do
bit
go
plumper,
like, we do like that. I mean, it's an adaptive thing.
I'm going to take it in a slightly different direction in that historically,
but it's not obesity. It's not obese
No.
love. It's just plumpness.
That's the direction I was going to take it. Like the further back you go, the food was a little more scarce. So the more weight you had, the more cellulite you had. It showed your class in that you are further up. You know, you're in a higher class. You're richer because you're able to afford all this food, and you're able to, put on more body fat. Where in today's society, where food is fairly plentiful, you are considered healthier and in a better standing if you're able to maintain a skinnier frame and better muscle tone.
Right, it's a difference of access. Today, anyone has access to poor diets that cause being overweight versus
back then it was the opposite way around.
Reversal.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting question. Like, are our inbuilt instincts sufficiently fine-tuned to detect classism? I'll bet you they are, and they're probably good enough at that anything that signifies class, we will go and through our own inbuilt instincts immediately pick that out and like people who are higher classes than we are.
Is that why black guys like?
I'm a professor! How dare you! How dare you!
It's a.
I mean, I don't think bigger issue is if you want to go and examine this stuff properly, you've really got to put aside preconceptions about what the morality of this is. I mean, you may not think it's moral for people to like the people that they do, but if you want to actually go research it and study it properly, you have to put aside those preconceptions.
Right, exactly. But this is my point about the left infiltrating things like evolutionary psychology and science, because they don't put away the moral implications. It's very difficult for someone who's like an Aspie scientist to just look at numbers and make conclusions versus someone who is emotionally reacting to those conclusions.
Right.
Well, again, I'd make the point that
there's less leftists there.
Well, in many of these fields too, when you actually look at the papers coming out, while they may go hide some of the conclusions, but to be a bit more politically correct, they're pretty straight up stuff that, if you actually read it carefully, is not very politically correct at all.
Well, I'm glad Peter is like a beacon of hope for once. By examining the intersections between dance and Pilates history, this article reveals the ways embodied discourses in Pilates are white in nature. Madonna's appropriating.
I mean, why don't we do an outreach program to bring Pilates to inner city youth?
I'd love to get your male opinions on this. There is no evolutionary reason, but there are historical and economic ones, why Caucasian features are presented in the media as the most attractive ones, or why, at this particular historical moment, very skinny women are considered more attractive than ones with a higher body mass index. Again, that's an assumption because plenty of men like more curvy women. And I hate that this is like this widely accepted assumption, because Okay, models are tall and skinny because it's easier for fashion designers to make clothes to fit one size. That's it. If you have fat models, they have to make clothes different sizes for everybody. It doesn't make economic sense. Okay, end of story. But most men that I've interacted with in my life don't like, 7 foot tall praying mantis women that have no boobs or ass. Most men like a little bit of meat on a woman.
Yeah, I've never found most models all that attractive. Most.
Except
but
facially.
Yeah, maybe. But like the models that everyone knows of, like let's say Tom Brady's wife, yeah, she's attractive. But for guys that if you actually go to like a fashion show, you're not going to find many of those women attractive.
And it's a type. Some guys love that, but it's not. They've used
very
these.
unique type.
They use an assumption that benefits their research. Like this assumption is not true.
I actually have an issue with the stereotype that white guys are considered more attractive than black guys, because that I don't think that's.
It's not true.
I don't think that's true at all, because an average black guy's body is more chiseled and does have better muscle tone than a white guy.
Yeah, and you also have to keep in mind, America is predominantly white. So for a very long time, most of the people in media, in movies, and the protagonists of that media were white. 15% of the population is black, only 15%.
You have to normalize for those percentages, and I think after you normalize, you're going to realize that that's not a true statement, that white males are considered more attractive.
Let's keep reading. Given that such preferences are not hardwired but are acquired through social influence, and also that is, you can argue that because they've done plenty of studies that show that
like not hardwired stuff. You can go give very, very young kids tests on this, and
that racist baby thing,
they
right?
show all kinds of preferences.
Right, this is what I was going to say. It's just hardwired into you from your hunter-gatherer times, because the other tribe will look a little bit different and act a little bit different, and if you see them from afar and you can identify those differences, you're more likely to survive.
I mean, it's just boring evolution. Like, chances are people that don't look like you aren't related to you, and if they're not related to you, they don't have much incentive not to kill you.
In this article, I employ Foucault's theoretical work to understand how yoga has become appropriated in the US media by analyzing the covers of popular yoga magazines, the Yoga Journal. So this girl loves reading yoga journals, so she decided to write a peer-reviewed paper on it.
Well, I mean, again, this whole concept of appropriation is not really the way I'd go think about this. I mean, it's culture.
It's popularization.
No one has, exclusive rights to culture. So if I want to go and extend your culture my own ways, I mean, why should you be stopping it? What are you going to use? Use trademark law against me? Tough.
And also, aren't a lot of people from America traveling to India to learn the deeper virtues of yoga practice because of the popularization of yoga? So third world countries like India are benefiting from this popularization of yoga.
Why are we privileging one race's view of yoga over another?
Because we're racist, Peter. I actually read this paper. How does Kardashian's own situating of the relationship between her body and her American heritage reinforce long-standing and problematic conceptualizations of whiteness as the privileged neutral and blackness as the authentically real? How does Kardashian's class positioning affect the discourse of her sexed and raced body? And given her lucrative career as a reality television star, can Kardashian be framed as a genial in the construction and performance of her public self? So, a lot of the...
Before you continue,
yeah.
I just want to go say that I'm going to pretend I didn't hear the last bit and hear that as Kardashians from Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
A lot of this paper, from when I read it, was talking about how it's like unfair or racist that Kim Kardashian's body is viewed as like this beautiful, amazing thing, even though a lot of black girls have the same body and it's not viewed to this as beautiful to the same degree. And I guess she's alluding to the fact that, oh, Kim is white, therefore racism. But what I would say is it's a simple result of human nature. Black bodies typically are more voluptuous, so it's more normalized in culture. Whereas a white-looking girl tends to be more skinny and less curvy and more flat, generally compared to black girls. So it's a novelty for a white-looking girl to have a black-looking body. That's why men think she's beautiful, because it's a novelty. It's like tiny Asian girls with giant breasts. It's a novelty because it's quite rare.
And somebody like Nicki Minaj has a similar view on her body.
People think she's beautiful.
And I think they're very similar in the way they're being portrayed regardless of skin color.
Nothing problematic here, guys. Biotourist performances, doing parenting during an ultrasound. This essay explores the prenatal ultrasound session as a stage of biotourist performances. Ultrasound sonographers effectively transform the fetus into an entertaining baby, the uterus into a loving, nurturing home, and the clients into parents and families. So they're doing their job. I love this. There's a lot of papers like normalizing our affection towards fetuses and babies as though we shouldn't, like, as though it's like a weird novelty that we have affection towards the things growing inside of us. This is a live world writing story about my stay as visiting scholar at the Department of Communications, University of Illinois. It is a story about open science economy, safe spaces, and other place learning and benefiting from uncertainty and confusion and the love of adventure and jazz. So she hung out with some profs and went to like a jazz festival.
Isn't a safe space by definition not an adventurous place?
FA in brackets T, fashion rhetorics, building a body positive methodology. This dissertation combines feminist and queer issues of embodiment, fat, and clothing by investigating how fat fashion bloggers, Tumblr, make a meaning through their dress practices in ways that are rhetorical, material, and embodied. I enact this methodology by interviewing three sample size, 3 self-identified fat fashion bloggers in 3 different countries. Tone's dying.
Yeah.
Oh my god, their sample size was 3. Clearly they're not, they were never...
Matthew Katie, PhD, Michigan State University, 2015.
Clearly...
110 pages.
Clearly they have never taken a STEM class.
Well, I mean, I prefer to go and engage with my own obesity by recognizing that I'm kind of fat.
In the study, I have used responses from 34 college women who completed an extra credit assignment.
We bribed them.
There was only 34 of them that completed extra credit in the entire college. That's impressive.
In a women's studies class that asked them to reject social norms and grow out their leg and underarm hair for a period of 10 weeks. Oh, this is what they're doing at universities now. This is the extra credits they're getting. Do you understand? To grow out your leg hair and arm hair, you literally do nothing. Responses revealed that women confronted direct and anticipated homophobia and heterosexism from others, as well as hostility for rejecting traditional norms of femininity. Heterosexual women regularly encountered demands that they acquire permission to grow body hair from their male partners, while queer and bisexual women expressed reluctance about further outing themselves via body hair. See, I don't have a problem with this part. Heterosexual women regularly encounter demands that they acquire permission to grow body hair from their male partners. If your male partner prefers your body in a certain way to enhance your sexual activity, and it's a dialogue, that's not like a big deal. Obviously, if there's force involved, leave. But people have preferences.
But what was
centrifuge at the liberal left part.
What was the reason? What was the purpose of the experiment? To see how many women they can break up the relationship.
Because they wanted it was an assignment, so it was to reject social norms and grow the leg hair.
Wait. So remind me again. This was on a left-wing campus. Wouldn't rejecting social norms be to go shave it?
It's not.
Australians watch live sports in large numbers and traditionally consume high quantities of meat pies. chips and beer within stadiums. However, the food and beverage preferences of stadium attending Australian sport fans are not well understood.
You know, speaking as someone with an Australian citizenship, I'm just going to feel vaguely offended by that study.
The author examines the consequences of stigma strategies in vegan activism as it is experienced by fat vegan activists. The fat politics of veganism in online spaces is examined. Results highlight the subjective experience of fat vegans, illuminating the meaning of healthism, sizeism, and thin privilege in vegan social justice spaces. This is so niche. This is so monoculture. This is so Tumblr. And it does scare me a little bit that this is a peer-reviewed paper. Like, imagine what kind of peers these papers have to be reviewed by, that they think that this is something that's worth studying. Most indicate that online vegan spaces feel safer than those offline. Duh. But most, real life isn't safe. Who would have thought?
I mean, when I'm around vegans, I'm always worried about one of them getting out a gun and maybe shooting me for eating animals.
In my experience with vegans, it's either they look like they can really use a bowl of pasta, or the last thing they need is another bowl of pasta.
These allegations of discrimination, because, speaking as a somewhat overweight white male, I always feel like reality is discriminating against me when I go climb a bunch of stairs.
Scientists try to avoid confirmation bias by exposing their work to peer review by critics with different views, but it's increasingly difficult for liberals to find such critics. Academics have traditionally leaned left politically, and many fields have essentially become monocultures, especially in the social sciences, where Democrats now outnumber Republicans by at least 8-1. In sociology, there's a ratio of 44-1. A student is much likelier to be taught by a Marxist than a Republican. The lopsided ratio has led to another well-documented phenomena. People's beliefs become more extreme when they're surrounded by like-minded colleagues. They come to assume that their opinions are not only the norm, but also the truth. John Turney, The Real War on Science. And this is just a tiny portion of the article, but he goes in depth of how this is leaking out of the social sciences to real fields like STEM.
I believe that.
Yeah, I don't know my experience. I mean, I went through both the art side of stuff and also the science side of stuff. And the science side of stuff, I mean, people were very both apolitical and also very scientific in rejecting this stuff.
Well, let me give you my example from the STEM field. So my master's was in financial engineering out of the math department. The person in charge of the program, her PhD was in the history of math. And she was in charge of the program for financial engineering, which is very advanced. It was great for me because I didn't think I was like all that great. It was very difficult. But because she didn't know anything and she didn't know any computer science, I can do whatever the hell I wanted on my master's thesis. And even if my code couldn't even compile, I can fake the output. And she would have absolutely no idea, because this is the person they put in charge of like
what school
the real STEM field. Oh, it's not. This was Florida State University.
Well, I mean, I went to U of T, which is considered to be a good school. So, I mean, if it's worse in other schools, maybe, but what can I say? None of this is my experience.
She was definitely left-leaning and totally not someone that should be in charge of an engineering program.
Well, I'm glad Peter is like a beacon of hope for once. The commentary text is, "Stop being ridiculous. They're not trying to turn teachers into Marxist brainwashers." Toward an Anti-Capitalist Teacher Education by Zachary A. Casey, University of Minnesota. Abstract. This is kind of scary. Get prepared. This paper outlines the culpability of teacher education in perpetuating the neoliberal churn in education, and addresses what must be done to reverse course and carve out a teacher education that is wholly committed to combating the disastrous effects of capitalist exploitation on both teachers and students. Finally, the author identifies a new vision and aim for teacher education that places a critique of capitalism at the center of teacher training that includes anti-capitalism as a fundamental aim for all teachers and classrooms. There has been, over the course of a generation, an effort in academia to push collectivist ideas, and I think we're seeing the fallout of this.
But here I am again, mixing misery and gin.